When I was outside the White House on Sunday night in the middle of that crowd celebrating the night's big news about the death of Osama bin Laden, I was on the phone with the studio here. I was tweeting and reporting back to the folks here in New York what that scene was like, how people were reacting outside the White House. One of the things I noticed was that really the only chant that ever got any traction in the crowd was USA, USA. People tried different ones. They tried stuff like na 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 na, right? Hey, hey. They tried that one. People tried variations of the hey, hey, ho, ho, indecipherable something's got to go, right? But really it was just USA, USA, or singing the Star-Spangled Banner. I thought it was interesting that people also kept trying for Obama killed Osama. Obama killed Osama. But that didn't really stick either. And that has been consistent with what's happened inside the White House since Sunday, too. The White House is not releasing any trophy photos of bin Laden's head. The president's visit to New York today was almost entirely off the record. They invited President George W. Bush along to the New York trip with President Obama. If President Bush wanted to go, he did not. If the White House had ever even considered trying to make this an Obama killed Osama kind of national moment, they have not done so. And that's kind of what this White House is turning out to be like. This show has been on the air for 2.5 years, roughly, since right before the election of President Obama and Vice President Biden. And a couple of different times since President Obama was sworn in, we have felt on this show like this administration had hit a milestone achievement, a political milestone that made it worth looking back and considering what they said they would do that they had actually done. One of the times we did it was last June when they passed Wall Street reform, the biggest reform of Wall Street since the Great Depression. We also tried it in December in the lame duck session on the eve of the president signing the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And on both of those occasions, I remember that segment being kind of a hard segment to produce. And that's because this White House does not brag about its achievements. They do not keep a running list anywhere, at least that I know of. They do not keep a running list of stuff they said they'd do that they actually did. I thought of that again today when we got the news about General Motors. GM, you may recall, very nearly went out of business not that long ago. Only 2 months after he took office, the new president said he would not let General Motors be a casualty of the Great Recession. He decided to have the government step in and take over the company and restructure it and try to bring it back from the dead. Mr. Obama staked his presidency in part on that. NBC News' analysis at the time was, as the GM bailout goes, so goes the Obama presidency. Well, you know how the GM bailout went? It went great. GM today reporting not just a profit, but a nice profit, weighing in at $3.2 billion, billion with a B. GM's North American plants more than doubled their earnings since last year. When President Obama made the decision to save GM, his critics said government had no business interfering with business. Business could not work with government anywhere near it. Republican Senator Lamar Alexander, for example, conjured the nightmare of Congress micromanaging GM.
How many cars should have flex fuel? What should the work rules be at the Flint plant? What should the salaries be in the executive offices? Where can conferences be held? Someone will want to know why the GM Volt, is buying a battery made in South Korea instead of in that congressman's congressional districts.
With all respect to Senator Alexander and his crystal ball, frankly, what most people want to know about GM's Chevy Volt is where they can get one, now that it's been named Motor Trend's Car of the Year. The GM government bailout worked. Sales are up by 1/4 over last year. An entire sector of the U.S. economy lives on thanks to that bailout. 1.4 million people still have jobs who would not otherwise have them in all likelihood. But the Obama administration is not crowing about it. They also didn't do all that much crowing about the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act for women, or expanding children's health insurance, or new hate crimes legislation, or the FDA being able to regulate tobacco for the first time, or reform of the credit card industry, or student loan reform, or, hey, health reform. Maybe that one should get its own screen. The aforementioned Wall Street reform, a new and better GI Bill, the biggest food safety bill since the Great Depression, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a treaty with Russia to reduce our nuclear arsenal by 1/3, an international agreement to lock down loose nuclear material around the world and keep it out of the hands of terrorists. Not to mention an economic growth rate that looked like this when President Obama took over, and that looks like this now. That's better. And, oh yeah, also, bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is dead, and we've got his thumb drives. This White House does not brag on itself. We are the ones keeping this list, apparently, not them. But whether or not you fault them for refusing to brag, at least in these first 2 years and a bit, this is turning out to be a speak softly but carry a big stick kind of presidency.